Hello, this is Isidore Lacey with the Shenandoah Valley Small Business Development Center, and I'm here with Belle Stemper, owner and creator of Ragtime Fabrics. Hi, Belle. How are you?
Hi, Isidore. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
I'm happy to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the SBDC.
I'm happy that you're here and you want to be a part of this project. I wanted to ask you, how has your experience been with the Shenandoah Valley Small Business Development Center?
It's been wonderful. It's been very helpful from beginning to end. You had said I am the creator and owner. I am no longer the owner of Ragtime Fabrics. I sold my business 2 years ago. At that time of the sale, I had owned it for 19 years. And the Small Business Development Center has been with me every step of the way. It started with a business plan that I created, taking a next level class, a semester-long class with the Small Business Development Center. And with that completed business plan, went to my bank and got secured financing to open up the doors.
You mentioned taking the next level course.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things that they made you do in that class, and what were some ways you believe it was very beneficial for your business?
What I found is working on the business plan, it made me look at every angle of starting and running a business, and the angles that that excited me, as well as those that didn't so much. For example, the marketing aspect. Back in 2002 when I was writing the business plan, the marketing availability was limited. It's not what it is today. And so I had newspaper and TV and radio. There were events that would go on around the valley in which I could promote my store, but no internet at that time, or at least if what was out there was not strong. There were not a lot of people online. Mm-hmm. So reaching my audience was very different than what it was when I sold the store 19 years later. That was fun. I liked that part. But when it came time to the bookkeeping and the accounting part of it, the legal part of it, I knew that needed to be done, but that's not really my strength or my interest. Mm-hmm. But I had to do it, and I'm grateful that I did, because I was able to look at the numbers and crunch the numbers and see what kind of sales I would have to have in order to support what I envisioned for my company, and to realize that right out of the gate I was not going to be able to do everything I wanted to do. When I started my business, it's a retail store. I guess to give you a little background on it, Ragtime Fabrics is a retail store that carries fabric for quilting and garment making and home decorating, costuming, and all the notions in the fabrics you need for these projects, as well as sewing machines. We're selling sewing machines and offering classes and offering classroom space for people to come in and sew, and for groups to gather, benevolent groups to gather and make things for the community in need. So there were a lot of angles, a lot of twists and turns that I had envisioned for my business. So the business plan helped me to pull back a little bit and realize that all these things that I wanted to do were going to take time, because they would take money. So I had my goals. I set my goals in place, what I planned to accomplish in the first year, and then 5 years out, and each year after that first year. So that was very helpful, more realistic. I feel like I had a more realistic idea going into this. The setting up of the business, the corporate structure of the business, the liability issues, insurance, and all those things that also are not really of interest to me, but they're very important. They're very critical. And so I researched all that. And by the time I was ready to open my business, I had figured out who I was going to contact for what, gathered up all the forms and made all the applications in the city and got my business license. And I felt ready to go, but I was doing a lot of work at the well, it wasn't the Rose Library, it was the Carrier Library there on campus, the old part of campus, and researching the industry, the fabric and sewing notions industry, and finding companies that sold these products. So it was a lot of investigative work.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be much easier now.
Yeah, you're mentioning how you were, it was a lot of going through books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that must have been a very tumultuous process, but, what were some key things you were looking for when you were researching?
Resources, suppliers of fabric that I could contact. So a lot of telephone calls, phone numbers. I was looking for phone numbers, addresses. So a lot of writing and a lot of telephoning to get the information that I wanted.
Yeah.
To open up a fabric store, where would you go? Where would you start? Who would you contact? Would you go to a fabric store and say, can you tell me who you buy your fabric from? Well, it's going to be proprietary. They're not necessarily going to want to share that with you.
Mm-hmm.
So making those kinds of contacts, doing that investigative work. I opened up a fabric store. It's not what I intended to do. Again, it was serendipitous the way that this came to be, as so much of life is. My husband and I have done remodeling. He has been a remodeler all his life, and I was at home raising my 2 children and helping him with his business, his remodeling business. And I had found a building on Court Square here in Harrisonburg that I had planned to purchase and remodel and put apartments in and some retail space down below. So I was working on that project and the deal fell through. So, but in the process, learned that a gentleman named Mike Helberg, who owned the fabric shop next door to the building that I had planned to buy and renovate, was planning to retire. And so Mr. Helberg was going to retire, and I thought, well, here's a business opportunity maybe. He's retiring, and if his key employees aren't ready to retire, they could help me learn the business. And so I went into the store and I talked to Mike and I talked to his employees, and I asked him if I could work at the store for free and volunteer my time there and learn his store and the people and what he knew of his business. And at the same time, I was working on my business plan. So this is how I spent the fall of 2002, was volunteering at the fabric shop in downtown Harrisonburg and working on my business plan. So when I opened, I was very dependent on the key employees to know how to sew and know one fabric from another, because I had no idea. Probably like you would have no idea.
It's very intricate, and there's a lot of specific details. Yeah. And you have to get it right.
Yeah, you do, because people come to you. You're the knowledgeable one. What is a satin versus a silk? What's the difference?
Exactly.
Yeah. A drapery fabric versus upholstery, and I didn't know that, and so my employees did.
And then you mentioned to me before the interview that someone came in and recommended a website potentially. Yes. So if you could, I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure. So I opened March of 2003, opened the doors, and a couple months later, a young woman came in and said she felt I needed a website, and I said I feel I do too, and so she set up a website, and that was another fun part of doing my business plan. I developed a logo. I developed a mission statement and developed a logo and a jingle, and that kind of thing I really liked, especially since I had planned to advertise on radio, although I guess now you could put a jingle on your website too. So she developed a website, and she was managing it, and then it was maybe a year or so later, and she said that the program had advanced enough where she would be willing and able to teach me how to manage the website. So the technology was phasing her out of her job, which was fine. She wanted to raise horses, so she was ready. And I was ready, sort of, to learn how to manage my website. Up until then, I had told you that I would do my marketing. Another marketing tool was to send out newsletters by snail mail, and I would work hard on typing up a newsletter and planning on sales, upcoming sales, and just tips and techniques, and making it fun and of interest, and would mail it out, and would get about a third of the mailings returned, unable to find the people at the address. So for whatever reason, they were undeliverable. So that was very frustrating. So the thought of having a website and having an online presence and being able to tell people that they could get information on a website freed me up a bit from that frustration of returned newsletters.
Absolutely. And yeah, going back, to your business plan, you mentioned a lot with having those aspects, specifically marketing, having that in a situation where it gives you more time to actually focus on the business instead of, the other things.
Right.
And I think the website could be very useful for that. And, you also mentioned Facebook as a great, opportunity.
It was about 2008 where I realized I was looking at Facebook for my own personal interest, but other people were saying, "Oh no, I'm not going to do Facebook." My customers, because I would always ask my customers. That's who I needed to know what made them tick. So I would always engage with them and my employees. So I became aware that those who were on Facebook were grandparents, so that they could see the pictures of their grandchildren. And I thought, well, that's a part of my demographic right there. These grandmothers who are in here buying fabric to make things for their grandchildren. So I started a Ragtime Fabrics Facebook page, and it was slow going at first, but now anybody who wants information can get it on the Facebook page. And also I think because we were online so early on, if you Google fabric, we come up first. And I also learned SBDC workshop about keywords and online presence. And so that was something else I just remembered about. So I grabbed onto as many keywords as I could and put them out there on the website. So if you Google fabric stores in Harrisonburg, we used to be the first, the top listing that would come up.
Yeah, utilizing those Google algorithms, because
yes,
it's all a numbers game,
Right, exactly. Yeah. So to have your foot in the door, and that's why with the e-tailing, I missed that foot in the door. When I realized that even was a door that I should probably go through, or that I could go through, I realized that was not the business model that I wanted. I did not want to spend my day at a computer taking orders and doing shipping and maintaining inventory, so that I knew that the people coming into my store, something would still be on the shelf and not being packaged and shipped to somebody else. It just boggled my mind, the thought of trying to do both, the e-tailing and the brick and mortar.
That poor bird just hit the window.
That's the second one.
Hopefully he's okay.
I know.
Specifically, outsourcing. What were there specific industries or companies that you used that would help you, enable more time for the QuickBooks to be taken care of, and what were some very helpful resources you were use?
At first, I was doing it all. I was doing the bookkeeping, the accounting, inventory, everything. I wasn't doing the legal part or the insurance, obviously. So I had a lawyer and I had an insurance agent, but it was a couple years in where I realized that the books were really tying me up and the accounting was tying me up. So I found a bookkeeping business. That was okay. It ended up not being okay. And so trial and error, and eventually I found people who, like mothers who wanted to work part-time, work from home, who had that gift of numbers and computer and liked to do that. And so the bookkeeper that I ended up with, that's who worked best for me. Just people who like to do this, that would enter the QuickBooks. And so then they would send the QuickBooks to my accountant. So to have a good accountant is critical. And now I don't even do the books for our remodeling business because we still have that.
Yeah.
My accountant's doing that as well. And that's relatively new. I had my bookkeeper, my friend, and everybody, or most people become friends, my employees. So my friend who was doing my books. But she was at a point where she was getting lots of grandbabies, and so she didn't want to do this anymore either. And so my accountant now is doing our books. But let's see, a banker, to have a good banker, so that's really important. To use the SBDC and to have a counselor. I guess anybody here, Rosie has been here. Gosh, Rosie's been here a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. She was here when Henry was here, but so Henry Reeves, yeah, he was the director when I first started, because I also wrote a business plan for our remodeling business, and that was when it was the Center for Entrepreneurial.
Center for Entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so we opened up Home Remedy Inc. is the name of our remodeling business, and that business plan I worked on in 92.
Mm-hmm.
Forgotten about that. That's kind of important, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and that one, it seems that I did a class. It was not the next level class, though. I'm sorry, I'm foggy.
There's so many names, acronyms. It gets confusing.
Yeah, but that was really helpful. And with that, I was able, as with Ragtime, I was able to go to the bank and secure financing.
And we also, we're talking about this before the podcast, working with Joyce and the Alpha Group.
Oh,
I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, Joyce Kretsch. What a gift. The community has lost a royal soul, and it's such a beautiful gift to our small business community here. Her legacy will live, and I really appreciate you doing this. But I met her, I guess she took over from Henry Reeves and had been the director for years. And Joyce would call me periodically and say, Belle, there's a workshop coming up that I think would be of interest to you. Or would you be willing to do a presentation or write a paper or fill out a questionnaire for our funding, or things like this. So we had a pretty solid working relationship. And one time she called me and said, I want to start a group of women entrepreneurs, and I want us to meet over, I think it might have been a 6-month period, and we met maybe every other week. And we had topics that she would present, and she'd have resources for us, but mostly it was an opportunity for our group. Let's see, Phyllis Friesen was in that group with the decorated concrete company. They had just moved here, just started, and Crystal Fleming with Casual Friday. So there were a few women. There was maybe 7 or 8 of us, in this group. And we became very close. I had told you that I personally am not a person for networking. I don't like the cocktail scene. I don't like the networking scene. I'm more comfortable in a small group. And so the Alpha Women's group that Joyce started was right down my alley, and I got close with the women in the group. We would share our concerns as they came up in our businesses, and it was confidential. We felt very comfortable with each other sharing what we did, and it was very helpful to hear different perspectives, as well as to get that support. Often as a business owner, it's a lonely venture. Yeah. It can be a lonely venture. Yeah.
And I think, making those communities more accessible and creating an environment where, people feel welcome is another big part. And, we were talking about before, communication on our phone has changed so much. And, we're losing that.
Yeah.
That one-on-one conversation,
yes.
Which I feel like is so valuable.
It's very valuable. Yeah. There are certain things that I feel would be very difficult to operate solely online, and that's a fabric shop. I think people need to come in and feel the fabric and see the fabric and get the colors just right, which is something that you can't necessarily do online. So I feel like that, and I've always felt that. But I feel also that the Small Business Development Center would be close to impossible to implement the services in the same manner solely online. I feel that this personal contact is just so important to small business owners.
I couldn't agree more. Specifically with small business owners, if you could recommend some tips of advice to it's a two-part question, any new fabric businesses, or also just businesses in general, what are some pieces of advice you would share?
I would say definitely come in and talk with a counselor here at the center, and do a business plan. The business plan gave me an opportunity to look at every aspect of the business before the doors were open. And so before I had both feet on the ground running with the business, I was able to get it set up, get the structure set up with the government, get my numbers, my federal tax ID numbers, set up my bank accounts, my marketing accounts, get everything in place before I opened the door. And that was because I took the time to do the business plan and realize everything that needed to be done ahead of time, and to keep the business up and running. But and I would be willing to talk to anybody, especially if they're interested in opening a fabric shop. I had planned to close my store, and because I had looked at selling it, and I became a grandmother 6 years ago. That really changed my world and changed my priorities, and so I found it was difficult for me to struggle or to juggle both being a grandmother who the little boys live here in town, so that makes a big difference, and the store, which had been my baby for so many years. So I was looking to get out of it and wanted to sell it to keep it going, but that was not coming through. I'd written out the COVID years, which affected the numbers, and to look at the store on paper was not as attractive to business brokers. So it happened that a person came into the store and was enamored with what he saw and what he felt in the store as far as the community and the family business that this is. And he pursued his own style of business plan, and he ended up buying the store 2 years ago. So the store is still open, and my employees who had been with me there when I closed are still there. The customers are still visiting, and I made it very clear to the new owner that the Small Business Development Center is a valuable resource for him as he gets his footing, and all throughout his time as a store owner. He has a social media business, and that's something else that the Small Business Development Center could help him with, because he is an entrepreneur. He's a small business entrepreneur. And it's not just a retail store that the center deals with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's small businesses in general.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And what were some of the difficulties you faced when you were working through selling the business with the Small Business Development Center, or what did the process look like for that?
Well, let's see. First, the hardest part was telling everybody.
Yeah. That
was really hard to tell my staff, and because I had been thinking about it for about a year before I said anything, and I was doing my homework and talking to people and looking around, and didn't want to say anything until I had a pretty good idea of the way that it was going to go. So when I told them, then I knew it was out. So I told them first, and then I had it up on the website and the Facebook, and was telling the customers. And what I was hoping for is that a customer would come along and say, I want to buy it. And I did. I had a couple people who came in, but the reality was it didn't work for those who were interested. So, but no one wanted to see it close. So COVID really changed things. COVID really changed the world of retail. And I think that anybody or most people would be able to say that they're doing more online shopping post-COVID than they did pre-COVID. A lot of retail stores hadn't made it through COVID. Mm-hmm. You're seeing a lot of stores close down. So, yeah, COVID really changed things. You had asked me what, let's see. The funny story about opening my business. A funny story. You wanted to know a funny story about opening my business. Yeah. And when I was working with Mr. Hellberg in the fabric shop, we settled the deal. He did a going out of business sale for a few weeks, and I was to purchase the remaining inventory at a fire sale, as well as his racks and fixtures and other things, pattern cabinets and registers and things like that. And he was on Court Square in Harrisonburg. The location I had was 60 West Market, which is across Court Square and just a block down. It's where now the Horizons gift shop is. So that was the original Ragtime Fabrics in the old Rockingham Motor Company building. We were there until 2015. So we went to the lawyers and we did the deal, and it was, I think, February 12th. Well, the next day we had the Ryder truck rented. I had my husband and my children and their friends ready to start moving everything out and across Court Square. And that day was the first day of a 3-day blizzard. So we were the only vehicle on the roads. The snow piled up. Every morning we would come and it was higher. The tracks we had made the day before were gone. And we just ended up parking this Ryder truck in the middle of Court Square because nobody was coming through. But we would cross-country ski our way down to the store and load it up and kind of sled it over to the new store location, then sled the truck back and pick up more. And it was quite the experience. I've got very fond memories of moving into Ragtime Fabrics. Yeah.
I really like that story, because it shows the flexibility of your business, Yeah,
you gotta be.
Yeah.
You gotta be.
And you were talking before, and you also mentioned that you were also a student of JMU.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to hear a little bit about, what were some of your initial interests in college? And
Okay, let's see. Well, I graduated from high school. Wasn't really a fan of the high school life, so I graduated a year early and started at a community college in Northern Virginia, and thought I'll get a 2-year degree and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I did. My passion and interest was forestry and something to do outside, horticulture with plants or something. And then I thought, I'm kind of enjoying college. I think I'll look at other colleges. So I found James Madison University and came down here. They didn't have a forestry department, but by then I had thought I would get into social work. And they had a good social work program. So I came as a transfer student in 1978 down here to JMU and lived off campus and was in the social work program for about a year and thought, well, this is not necessarily what I want to do either. And so I still had the passion for forestry and botany, but that meant going to tech if I really wanted to get into that type of program. And I didn't want to leave JMU. So I studied biology and got a secondary teaching certificate and graduated in 1982 and taught for about 3/4 of a year. I took maternity leave as my first child was born when I was a teacher at Spotswood High School and realized that teaching was not my thing. So then I got into management. Also, let's see, after college, those were the jobs I tended to be working. I managed restaurants. And so found that management was more my passion, teaching was not. And when my husband wanted to start his remodeling business, then I could take over the management of it. I also got to do the designing of the remodeling projects that he was doing. But never pursued anything in biology, just my own personal interest. But the JMU community, I felt like I understood it and I related to it.
Yeah.
And so, and I still do. It's a very different school than it was back in 1982. I went up there to Squire Hill, and I don't even know if it's called Squire Hill anymore. Took the turn down Devon Lane and could not believe what is down there. That used to be it, just this little small apartment complex, Squire Hill, down Devon Lane. But now Devon Lane goes all the way around and connects, and there are lots of apartments back there.
Yeah, I mean the hills of South and North here.
Yeah.
It's very expansive.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I mean, I knew things were growing and changing, but I'd never gone down that street. So I had no need to go down that street. But so yes, JMU has grown a great deal. I think there were maybe 8,000 or 9,000 students here when I was in school.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah.
Now, I mean that sounds like a very nice school, but it's not the JMU that
Right.
it is today.
It's not at all. It's not at all.
Yeah.
And I remember the town and gown. There was a greater division, it seemed, between town and gown, and that's not so.
And town and gown means more like
the townies and the gown, meaning
okay.
the Ivy Tower, the academics.
Okay, I see.
So town and gown, yeah, those who wear the graduating gown, the cap and gown to graduation. So the town people and the gown people.
I've never heard that before.
I'm glad I could teach you something.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, it's very different now. The town has opened its arms warmly, and it always had, although there was a bit of, I guess, territorialism that doesn't seem to be here quite as extensively as it was back then. Yeah.
Wow, that's really nice to hear. I think we were going to wrap up pretty soon, but I wanted to, give you a moment to talk a little bit more about your modeling business, and if you wanted to showcase that for the listeners.
The remodeling?
Yeah, if you'd like to,
Okay. Well, back in 92, I wrote up a business plan
Mm-hmm.
for my husband's remodeling company, Home Remedy, and that was with Henry Reeves. And I believe I met Joyce around that time too. I knew Joyce before I started into the Ragtime Fabrics project. With Ragtime Fabrics, I certainly utilized the Small Business Development Center more
Mm-hmm.
than I did with the remodeling business. That was pretty simple, just being a one-person operation. And so drew up the business plan for Home Remedy and went to the bank and got the financing and drew up a logo. I had everything in place, knew the insurances again, the marketing. We bought a big step van for my husband, a retired FedEx truck, and painted it green and put his logo on it. And but again, the business plan was so helpful to be able to explore what I needed to know about jumping into a business.
Absolutely. I guess I know some businesses are trying to, operate without that. I think it's really important,
I feel, for me, it certainly was to take the time before things got really busy running the business to look at everything
Mm-hmm.
instead of trying to do it while you're in the throes of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I did that too. And it wasn't much fun.
Yeah.
I prefer to work where I have time to really process the information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some time to evaluate what's going on.
Right.
Yeah. And is your remodeling business still in place?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the name, just for the listeners?
Home Remedy Incorporated.
Home Remedy Incorporated.
Home Remedy.
Yeah. If anybody needs some home remodeling,
Right.
please.
Okay, thanks for the plug.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you coming in and taking the time to do this interview with me. It really means a lot, and I really, on behalf of the SBDC, I really appreciate, the work that you've done and, continue to do for the community.
Thank you, Isadora. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.